Before Paul Heyman made tables, barbed wire, and blood synonymous with South Philly, there was one man who decided wrestling had gone soft. And that man, Joel Goodhart, was going to fix it. In the early 90s, he would launch a promotion that lit the fuse of the Extreme Revolution, and then imploded. This is Defunct Championship Wrestling, Episode 31, the story of Joel Goodhart and the Tri-State Wrestling Alliance. Joel Goodhart. He didn't get into the business as a teenager like Jim Cornette. He wasn't a second-generation promoter like Jerry Jarrett. He wasn't a former wrestler like so many others in this series. He was a fan, just like you or me. Goodhart attended his first wrestling show at just 4 years old, and like so many of us, that was it. He was hooked. As a young fan, Joel's dad would bring him to the Market Street Arena to see the stars of the WWF like Bruno Sammartino. And also, like most of us, Joel found his way to a 9-to-5, working in the insurance business. Then in 1985, Joel made a change. After a decade in insurance, he and a couple of clients, Carmella and Paul Panfil, who were also wrestling fans, decided to open a pro wrestling retail store called the Squared Circle. And if you're going to open a wrestling store, 1985 was the year to do it. The WWF was exploding, Hulkamania was running wild, wrestling was everywhere. The timing couldn't have been better. The store grew to become pretty successful. And as it gained popularity, so did Goodhart's connections. One of those connections was Pennsylvania resident and WWF legend Dominic DeNucci. DeNucci actually suggested, with all the connections they've made, they might want to look into promoting a show. So they did. And according to Goodhart himself, it was absolutely the worst wrestling card I've ever seen. It flopped. Joel has admitted that he had a big ego at the time. That first failure knocked him down a peg. But instead of quitting, he stayed involved. The group sponsored meet and greets, they hosted bus trips to shows. They even helped promote NWA events in Philadelphia in the late 80s. Around the same time, Joel and the Panfils launched Wrestling Radio on Sports Radio 650 WIP. The show was pretty popular among local wrestling fans. Having a wrestling show mixed in along with the Sixers, Phillies, and Eagles coverage must have been pretty cool. Every Sunday at noon, Joel and his co-host Carmella featured interviews with wrestling personalities, trivia contest, call-ins from listeners, news and hot takes on wrestling happenings of the day. Like a modern podcast.
You have a wrestling talk radio show in Philadelphia?
That's exactly what we have, and thank you for allowing us to come out here, first of all. But what we have is, as you said, a radio talk show for professional wrestling. As to our knowledge, we are one of the only, if not the only one in the country, definitely in the vicinity of Philadelphia.
You are the co-host along with Joel, right? Mm-hmm. Joel, how do you guys go about, I mean, it must be a massive job trying to keep, gather information from all these different areas. How do you do that?
All week long, Paul's on the telephone.
Oh, I
see. And Paul does the bulk of the work in terms of gathering information. Friday night or Thursday night, Carmella sits in front of the computer and types out the information. I just kind of walk in and say, what do I have to say? I got the easy part of the deal.
You got the easy job then.
But no, we got contacts all over the world, and we...
Wrestling Radio and Squared Circle even hosted a Wrestler of the Decade banquet honoring Ric Flair in 1989. Goodhart is a pretty interesting guy. He had a big personality that really catches your attention. Watching the Flair banquet, it's clear that he liked to talk and be the master of ceremonies, if not the center of attention totally. And he loved pro wrestling. After buying out his partners in the store, Goodhart decided to get more involved in wrestling and give promoting shows another shot. And this time, he was going to do it right. In 1989, Joel Goodhart launched the Tri-State Wrestling Alliance. The Tri-State referring to Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. If he was going to promote again, the show was not going to be the drizzling shits. The solution? Stack the cards. TWA ran quarterly supercards in Philadelphia, drawing around 1,500 fans. They also ran smaller towns like Pine Hill, New Jersey and Newark, Delaware. They also frequented Mike Schmidt's original sports bar for events. And Goodhart wasn't booking nobodies that he pulled out of Tony Luke's. Early cards featured Paul Orndorff, Bam Bam Bigelow, Bob Orton Jr., Don Morocco, and Nikita Koloff. They even brought in Kerry Von Erich and Jerry Lawler for a USWA World title match. That's an insane lineup for an independent promotion in 89 or 90. But what made TWA special wasn't just the big names. Their local hungry indie talents really resonated with fans. Guys like the Cheetah Kid, aka Rocco Rock, DC Drake, Johnny Hotbody, JT Smith, Mr. Sandman, and Larry Winters. These guys may have just started as names to fill out the cards, but they would become stars in Philadelphia. In the summer of 1990, TWA crowned its first heavyweight champion, when Rockin' Rebel won a Battle Royal. He vacated the belt the next day. Eventually, DC Drake would defeat Rockin' Rebel at Autumn Armageddon 1990 for the championship, and hold the title for over 300 days. That show also featured Adrian Street, Abdul the Butcher, and another chapter in the never-ending Terry Funk vs. Jerry Lawler feud. By 1991, TWA was arguably the hottest independent promotion on the East Coast. A big part of that success was diverting away from what other indies and the national promotions were doing. Where other promotions were trying to tone down violence, Goodhart and TWA were turning the violence up. In 1991, wrestling on national TV was getting cleaner, less rough around the edges. Joel Goodhart hated that. He proudly said, "Our slogan is, we wrestle, we brawl, we do it all. We do provide wrestling, but we also provide brawling. We provide blood and guts. Today's wrestling is so sanitized a sport that if you watch TV, you're not watching wrestling anymore." Whenever he brought in talents, they came with ideas from places they'd already been, like Memphis, Puerto Rico, Dallas, Florida, etc. And Joel happily borrowed from these territories. The scene in the early 90s was much different with the various independent promotions popping up. As far as I know, a lot of these new independent promotions weren't trying to rock the boat, just bringing in ex-WWF and WCW guys to mix it up with local talents. Fun for the whole family type of shows, safe to bring the kids. But Joel didn't want kids at his shows. He wanted adults ready for violence. He wanted blood and guts. What we now call hardcore or extreme wrestling in 1991 was deemed shock wrestling. Aside from the usual cage and falls count anywhere matches, they had barbed wire matches, taped fist matches, Russian chain matches, a lumberjack match with the fans as lumberjacks, reverse cage battle royals, and a last blood battle royal, where if you got busted open, you were eliminated. Mick Foley would later recall Goodhart often saying, "Most groups' first match doesn't mean anything, but our guys are different. We want the first match to go all over the building, so people can't wait to see what's next."
If a fan would get involved in the business, people like Jim Herd could never come along and take over, my opinion. When I book matches that I would like to see. I've created a niche that I think there are others who would like to see the same kind of matches that I want to see. And the type of wrestling that we do in the TWA can't be seen anywhere else. I've said all along that most promotions coming along today just give you more of the same. We overdose it, all right? We go outside the ring in just about every match. It's pure and simple violence on our card. We've got Jim Cornette getting violent on our card, okay?
That philosophy of every match on the card stealing the show, for better or worse, changed Philadelphia wrestling and wrestling as a whole forever. At their peak, TWA was allegedly drawing triple what WCW was drawing in Philly. And then came the feud that put them on the map for hardcore tape traders. Cactus versus Hot Stuff. Cactus Jack and Eddie Gilbert had wrestled a few times in WCW, but in TWA they went further than they ever could have with Turner. Their Falls Count Anywhere and barbed wire matches became legendary. The finish to the barbed wire match was especially gruesome. The match was ruled a no contest when Mick got hung up in the ropes doing the hangman spot and couldn't get out for a long time. And reminder, the ropes had barbed wire strung along them, so when Foley had his head and neck tangled in the ropes, they're also wrapped in barbed wire. He's in that position for far longer than I think I've ever seen. It's pretty scary, but Goodhart loved it. The feud climaxed at Summer Sizzler 2 in August 1991 in a best-of-3 series. A Falls Count Anywhere match won by Cactus Jack, a stretcher match won by Eddie Gilbert, and a steel cage match that went to a double DQ. The matches were spread throughout the night, and Foley later said that Eddie called that night the best matches of his career. Tri-State was gaining attention, including from a local businessman named Todd Gordon. Todd Gordon first heard of Goodhart through Wrestling Radio. On his show, Goodhart was offering wrestlers for personal appearances. As a lifelong wrestling fan, Gordon thought it'd be a great idea to have a wrestler at his jewelry store, Carver Reed, to sign autographs and maybe drum up some additional business on a Saturday afternoon. So Goodhart got Gordon set up with Missy Hyatt. It paid off well enough, so Gordon started advertising on his radio show. He also started attending TWA events, and over time, he grew close with Goodhart. Eventually, in 1991, Gordon wanted to raise money for his charity, the Philadelphia chapter of the Variety Club, which supported children with disabilities. He partnered with TWA for a charity show at the Philly Civic Center. Todd saw working with Tri-State as a fun way to raise money and maybe get into the ring himself. And that's exactly what he did. Todd pitched using himself as a way to get heat on one of Goodhart's heels, Johnny Hotbody. In the angle, Hotbody took the giant charity check and ripped it up. As Gordon gave him a piece of his mind, Hotbody tossed the local businessman out of the ring to the floor. Gordon broke a rib when he landed, but he loved every second of it. Behind the scenes, however, things weren't great. As their friendship grew, Goodhart confided in Gordon that things were not going well financially for Tri-State. So Gordon loaned him $1,000 to get through that month's show. The next month, Goodhart went back to Gordon with hat in hand again. He was short for the next show and needed another grand to make sure everyone got paid. After Gordon declined to bail him out again, Goodhart offered him 15% of Tri-State Wrestling Alliance. Gordon also declined that lucrative offer. That decision would eventually change the course of wrestling history. But more on that in the season finale. TWA looked successful, but the math wasn't mathin', as the kids say. Goodhart was shelling out more money than Tri-State was bringing in. Paying airfare and hotels, paying high guarantees. He also paid for his radio airtime. Even a $28,000 gate like Autumn Armageddon 2 would still lose money. Goodhart actually had a pretty accurate quote about running wrestling shows at the time. If Ted Turner couldn't make money, Joel Goodhart wasn't going to make it. Some talent realized they could name their price and he would pay it. If Joel Goodhart wanted you on his show, he'd get you on his show. There were also increasing credibility issues. He started false advertising big names like Terry Funk, who Goodhart knew well in advance was injured and wouldn't be appearing. He was having public spats with talent like Missy Hyatt, who once confronted him for selling her photos without giving her a cut. Despite the crowds and big cards, the business model was not sustainable, and TWA was collapsing. Then came the Hail Mary. January 25th, 1992, Philadelphia Civic Center, the main event, TWA champion Buddy Landel versus 70-plus-year-old Nature Boy Buddy Rogers. The Battle of the Nature Boys. It was Goodhart's way of trying to capitalize on the Hogan vs. Flair matches happening on WWF house shows at the time. According to Goodhart, he had originally planned for the Battle of the Nature Boys to be Landel vs. Flair, claiming he and Flair had agreed to a deal after Flair quit WCW, but then he signed with the WWF and the deal was off. Also advertised was Austin Idol, Abdul the Butcher, Cactus Jack, and the Fabulous Freebirds, all fly-ins. Joel was pretty confident the show would be a success, even saying on John Arezzi's radio show in November of '91 that the Battle of the Nature Boys match would be worth the fans' money even without the rest of the card. There was one problem. Goodhart didn't have money, but he kept promoting it on the radio, telling fans to get their tickets now for a great night of wrestling. A week before the show, Goodhart announced on Wrestling Radio that he was ending the radio show and the Battle of the Nature Boys event was canceled.
This will be the last hour of Wrestling Radio here in Philadelphia on 610 WIP. Be that effective immediately. The Tri-State Wrestling Alliance will no longer be in business.
Fans weren't refunded, Joel Goodhart disconnected his phone, and just kind of disappeared. On that final broadcast, listeners say he vented his frustrations, angry at fans for not supporting TWA more. He went out shooting, brother. Tri-State Wrestling Alliance was dead. TWA was gone, but something had changed in Philadelphia. Tri-State had proven there was an audience for violence. Todd Gordon would soon launch Eastern Championship Wrestling, and later with Paul Heyman, Extreme Championship Wrestling. Joel Goodhart lit the fuse. Todd Gordon and Paul Heyman threw the bomb onto the corner of Swanson and Rittner. And the business was never the same. In 2009, Tri-State alumni Mark Tattaglia and a team relaunched TWA, running shows in Jersey, mostly out of Flyers Skate Zone. The revival shows featured former TWA names like Tony Stetson, Larry Winters, Don E. Allen, and Glenn Osborne. They also brought in Philly favorites like the Blue Meanie and Steve Carino, and rounded out the card with Northeast indie stars like the Logan Brothers, Ricky Reyes, Shockwave the Robot, and Rob Echoes, Robbie E. The new Tri-State ran several shows a year throughout 2009, 2010, and 2011, usually attracting a couple hundred fans each time out. In August 2010, ECWA promoter Jim Kettner retired from wrestling and sold the promotion to Mike Tartaglia. As his responsibilities grew with ECWA, Tartaglia decided to shelve TWA. In October 2024, it was announced that Tri-State Wrestling Alliance was coming back one final time, and this final event would once again be promoted by Joel Goodhart. It all started in the summer of 2024 on a podcast when Chubby Dudley pitched the idea that the TWA guys should have banners raised at the 2300 Arena, along with the ECW legends. Stetson, Larry Winters, DC Drake, Hotbody, and Goodhart all deserved to be honored in his opinion. When Goodhart heard this idea, he got an idea of his own, coming back to wrestling one more time, bringing TWA back one more time. So he enlisted the help of Chubby Dudley, and together they were able to resurrect Tri-State for a final farewell. On May 3rd, 2025, Tri-State Wrestling Alliance presented One and Done. The show had everything you'd expect from a Joel Goodhart show. National TV names like Tommy Rich, The Rock and Roll Express, Super Crazy, and Shane Douglas. They also featured a new generation of stars like Tessa Blanchard, Darius Carter, Notorious Mimi, Gabby Ortiz, and Kerry Morton. And obviously, some TWA favorites returned in some capacity. Breaker Morant and Chris Wilde battled to determine the final TWA champion. Tony Stetson wrestled Mike Tartaglia in his final match, with Glenn Osborne as the timekeeper. The Sandman appeared, and Todd Gordon even showed up for the send-off. And probably the most meaningful, the TWA and its legends got their banner. While the event didn't draw a gigantic crowd to the 2300 Arena, it did provide Joel Goodhart and Tri-State some closure, and in a way a small victory lap for how they influenced the business. And that's the story of the Tri-State Wrestling Alliance. Joel Goodhart was flawed. He overspent, he overpromised, he burned bridges, but he also saw something others didn't. He saw that wrestling didn't have to be sanitized and safe. He saw that fans would pay for chaos. Tri-State Wrestling Alliance existed for barely 2 years, but in that short time it helped shape an entire revolution. It opened up a whole new lane for wrestling promotions to follow. And whether history remembers him as a visionary or a cautionary tale or a carny, one thing is certain. Without Joel Goodhart, pro wrestling, specifically independent wrestling, would look vastly different. Let me know your thoughts on TWA in the comments, and feel free to suggest other promotions for future episodes. If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so by subscribing or finding me on social media, either here or here. I'm Scott from WrestleSpective. Watch wrestling, love wrestling. Thanks for watching.